Hey everyone, I'm Richard, and this is Grey Wizard Gaming. This is another one of my 5 strategies videos. This is about the yellow sign. Now this faction is very different, and they have kind of their own meta game going on, and that can encourage a yellow sign player to become very close-minded and just be fixated on their spell books because they're like, boom, 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 and then I've got my spell books and I'm going to win. No, they really aren't. I mean, that's just usually not going to happen. Maybe in the very beginning, the very first couple games with a new group, but the reality is that following the necessary steps to get all of your spell books is a mistake to fixate on as opposed to the larger strategy. So let's get to it. The first strategy, he who must not be named, Hastur, the big boy, he is your key. And it can get confusing because you have a great old one first turn, right? I mean, you're going to go somewhere, you're going to get king in yellow, and you're like, I'm set, I'm ready. And yeah, you can get most of your spellbooks that way. That's a mistake. You need to get Hastur by third action phase minimum, if not second. And that is primarily because you need the third eye, right? The third eye reduces the cost of Desecration to 1, and if it succeeds, you gain an Elder Sign. So if you've already gotten 3 desecrated areas before you even get Hastur out, then you paid extra power for 3 places and you're 3 Elder Signs short. So if you lose at the end of the game, and you lose by, well, 1.5 Doom points per Elder Sign, so if you lose by 4.5 Doom points or less, then that's basically kind of your fault if you didn't make the effort to get Hastur, even if that means you can't do a lot the first couple turns. You should be scary, especially if you have Hastur out, and people shouldn't want to mess with you. So that's very, very important. The other aspect of that, of course, is that even if you lost only, let's say, by 4 points, or even maybe lost by 8 points, if you had been able to get 4.5 points first, you could have ended the game faster, right? So that's an important point with Elder Signs, is you can force the end of the game by revealing them and getting the points. So, all right, tip number 2, fear the Walking Dead. Zingaya. I almost never see this get used. It makes me sad. I almost never see it used. Zingaya. If undead are in an area with enemy acolyte cultists, transform one such acolyte cultist into an undead. Doesn't matter about Great Old One. Doesn't matter about nothing. If you have undead there, you can just chew away using Zingaya. A strategy that you might consider if it's there. If people put themselves in a position where they have no power very early on, you might want to take their home gate away from them. You can move in, you can Zingaya. Remember, Zingaya both takes away a cultist and puts out a unit. So for 1 cost, you're both almost like capturing, but immediately getting that power and spending it on a undead. So that's how you really have to kind of look at it. Everything in Cthulhu Wars is power efficiency. And Zingaya can allow you to take gates, definitely early on, and possibly throughout the entire game. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Tip number 3, I already mentioned it, Desecration can wait. Desecration can wait. Seriously. Man, it's between Black Goat and Yellow Sign, you can really, really screw yourself if you fixate on the spell books before you take advantage of either other players' weaknesses or shore up your own weaknesses, you have so much going on if you can just hold up on your desecration. The other thing is what we'll go into on tip number 4. So tip number 4, use your free actions wisely. And what do I mean by that? So Yellow Sign has a number of, free combo actions, and 2 of those is the Screaming Dead and He Who Is Not to Be Named. So the Screaming Dead, move the king in yellow to an adjacent area. Any undead in the same area can move with him for free. Immediately after, you may take a second different action. You may not take He Who Is Not to Be Named as your second action. All right, keep that in mind. He Who Is Not to Be Named, move Hastur to any area containing a cultist of any faction. The cultist said his name, possibly by accident. Immediately after, you may take a second different action. You may not take the Screaming Dead as your second action. Okay. Both of these actions give you an action which may not be each other. You do not have to use the action in that space. And that I almost never see. I almost never see someone move in somewhere and then do something else somewhere else. But you really need to leverage these powers are to allow you to take advantage of other people, and you do have to take advantage of other people. You're gonna have to be stealing gates from other people. I know you want to do your own thing, and when I play Yellow Sign, I want to do my own thing, and I want to be left alone. But you need power, and you can't ignore power. So if you can get a bunch of power using Feast, which gives you power for your Desecration tokens, that's great. And that gets a little bit easier if you have neutral units that can fill those spots, by all means. However, the only way this works is if you actually act. It can't just be a threat. You actually have to act and fulfill your threats. And part of that is, using these free actions to then Zingaya, right? Screaming Dead, and boom, now you've just taken a place. Hastur, and now you use Shriek of the Byaki to move all your troops in to protect him. Next turn, you start Zingayaing, and then the area is yours. You just taken a stronghold from somebody else, whatever. I mean, you have so much flexibility, but these flexibilities cost power, and so you have to have power, and you probably have to do things across the board simultaneously, and these free actions are what can allow you to do that. Even using that free action, which can't be each other, but can be the other Great Old One, right? So you can move with Screaming Dead, move your army in, and then spend the power to move Hastur in, right? As your extra action. Then, if you have all your spell books, unlimited combat and kill the Great Old One. So you just moved in a whole army of undead. Then you brought in Hastur. Now, yeah, you have to be careful, I guess, but with Vengeance, you're likely to kill the enemy Great Old One, and that's kind of what you do, is you kill enemy Great Old Ones, and in particular, some of your biggest threats are some of the most vulnerable, and that's basically Nyarlathotep and Shub-Niggurath, either of which really struggle to survive losing their Great Old One in the mid game. A lot of times losing the Great Old One in the mid game can drop them down from first place to second or third place, and they just don't catch up. But all of this comes from being patient and then really leveraging things in the middle of the game. Tip number 5, use expansions. The yellow sign definitely benefits from having things like the high priests. They benefit from having neutral units. If you can, try to push to get some of these things out. It's funny because to a certain extent, I don't usually find a lot of direct synergies between neutral units and yellow sign. However, any neutral unit, or even neutral great old one, IGU something, that gives you more units, lets you leverage your feast power more readily, right? So it's funny because even if you're just like, I just want this unit who can sit there for the rest of the game. That's it. I don't even want them to do anything. I hope nobody kills them. That's it. Just sit there. That is a very common strategy with yellow sign when you're playing with more of the expansions. You can get Hastur out pretty readily second turn if you use a high priest. So I've said this before, we play with the high priests always, and we always have. I literally got the high priests with my very first boxes, and we don't play without the high priests ever. And I don't know why you would. I just feel like they're so core to the game, because you really figure, you Google and you see like, okay, there's two opener strategies for yellow sign. Okay. But when you add the high priest, suddenly basically every faction has at least a third opener that is recognized as a valid, strong, good opener. And yeah, I definitely want to start talking about how we leverage the high priests more, because a lot of times, even myself, when I'm experimenting in games for these videos, I won't use the high priest because I know some of you don't have them, but we don't even pass out the rules for the high priest. The high priest is so easy. Pay 3 power, and at the end of if anybody's action, sacrifice to get 2 power. So they're so easy to use that, use a bottle cap or something. I don't know. I just think that while I'm a big fan of playing only with the figures, to the point where I won't even usually use placeholders for something like the Ancients, where I was like, I refuse. I'm not going to play the Ancients until they come out. So I never did any videos about them until they came out. High priests, if for some reason they're out of stock, I would start playing with them until they came in stock. It's a cool pack. I think it's great. I do wish they had their own sculpts. Now that the cultists all have their own sculpts, I wish they had their own sculpts too. But otherwise, I am really happy with them. I really like them. And yellow sign, you want more units so that you can get more power from desecration tokens. So yeah, that's my thing. Tip number 5, it's a little bit of a cop-out maybe, but try to get your group to use neutral units and or the high priest, and it's just going to give you more options so that you're less predictable, even to yourself. I don't want to know what I'm going to do the first 3 turns. I have a plan, and that plan does not survive meeting the enemy. I'll tell you. So often, that's why these aren't 5 openers or 5 or the number 1 opener. This is 5 tips, because these tips can be used no matter what your enemies are doing, and that's the point of this. So with that, I'd like your tips down below. What is your thought on the high priests? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? And with that, bye everyone.
Turn around, I can't see your face. Tell me, where did you go?
Excuse me, do you have time to talk about Excuse me, do you have time to talk about our Lord and Savior, Great Cthulhu?
Give the less I get.